Nintendo is one of the most iconic and most important companies in the entire video game industry. I have to admit that I was one of those kids who also grew up with having Nintendo consoles, and I was always a huge gamer and still am to this day, and always will be. It honestly pains me to say this myself, but Nintendo is not the company it once was, and I personally think Nintendo has become a shell of its former self. They don't really have any passion anymore for what they exist doing, and this may be a bit of a hot take, but I honestly think there's more wrong with Nintendo than just the company itself. Now, don't get me wrong. Nintendo as a whole company was responsible for making some of the best video games ever made in history. I, for one, was always a huge Zelda fan because I always liked both the gameplay and the stories they had. I grew up also playing things like Smash Brothers, Okami, and while I never really played many Mario games, I've always respected the franchise, and I've also played several other Nintendo games over the years as well. I even argue that Tales of Symphonia Dawn of the New World is one of the most underrated games ever released, as I personally think that game doesn't get the credit that it really deserves. However, I do think that over time, even the quality of the games they release have dropped over the years, and I feel like Nintendo doesn't even really make great games anymore. That's not to say literally everything Nintendo now makes is bad, and looking at the videos I've made in the past, I will admit that saying Tears of the Kingdom, marking the downfall of the video game industry, as my title for that video was a bit of an exaggeration, because despite the flaws that game had, it still was overall a decent game because of its decent gameplay. But the real reason why I argued that was because of two reasons. One is the lack of original ideas and the game's disregard with what at least made Breath of the Wild more unique and fresh, and sharing Breath of the Wild's issues, the same issues that Breath of the Wild had, trying to tell a compelling story. I believe one of the reasons why modern gaming sucks is because most people making these games just simply don't know how to write a good, compelling narrative with great characters anymore, and instead rely more on brand recognition than anything. I think, in real honesty, Bayonetta 3 was the game that truly marked the downfall of Nintendo more than any game out there, and I even did a whole video reviewing it, as I felt the story and characters were shit, and the gameplay overall was a mixed bag, sometimes being decent and sometimes being downright terrible. Bayonetta 3 showed me that Nintendo was becoming more greedy as a company, and I think that because, and while I understand a lot of people, including myself, have a strong, warm heart for Nintendo with the games they used to make, the brutal, harsh truth is that Nintendo isn't the same company that once had real games like Xenoblade Chronicles 1, which was one of my favorite games of all time too, by the way, on their platform. They just want to milk out half-assed projects to fans to make money because they know how they can take advantage of their consumers' only concern for brand recognition, and they know people will eat up anything just as long as it has Mario, Zelda, Donkey Kong, or Metroid on the cover. And that's how we end up now looking at the Switch 2 and how much video games are skyrocketing their costs now. By the way, before we continue on, please like and subscribe for more awesome content. Your support means the universe to me, and I really appreciate it. With that in place, let's move on to the topic at hand. Now, for those of you wondering, no, I did not ever buy a Switch 2, and I refuse to sell my soul buying this soulless piece of junk hardware when I could relive all of my memories playing games I've owned in the past. To be honest with you, Some of you may not really like what I'm about to say here. The biggest reason why Nintendo is becoming more and more like this as a company is because consumers don't actually mind being taken advantage of. And then you even have people on the internet and content creators who complain all the time now about how the Switch 2 is designed and how the games actually are on the console. My question to those people is wondering why, if you people said that you were unwilling to even buy the console to begin with, then why did you actually do it? I'll tell you actually exactly why these con artists bought this piece of shit. It's because they're not actually genuine in the opinions they have, and they're more concerned with that if they truly stand their ground, that they'll lose relevancy on the platform, and people won't want to hear it because they'll perceive it as content that's too negative and too harsh on what's growing as the fastest selling product. They're more concerned about meeting the eyes of the public to appease some of their viewers, because if they don't, they won't make enough money to put food on their plates. This has nothing to do with informing you of how they actually look at what people are selling to you and being truthful. They just want to be puppets to suit a larger crowd, and as soon as they probably heard that this was the fastest selling console ever in history, they decided to jump on the wagon, because otherwise they'll have no other way to stick in the present time with their audience to gain viewership and generate revenue. It's all just a big bloated scheme to earn money instead of having any real soul, depth, or passion, so people turn to consuming robots. Well, I have news for you naive dumb fucks to wake up. You guys got what you deserved with this console. You deserve to hold on to a piece of plastic that will make sure that you aren't able to buy anything anymore and throw it in the dump once its marketplace shuts down, because the people who just consume things and just want to sit around worshiping all their favorite e-girls all day on Twitch and on OnlyFans bought this junk in the first place. Money is what builds an empire strong, and without it, you can't actually have any real control over anyone or anything else. The truth is that the world only really answers to you when you have enough money in your bank to compare yourself to entire countries worth of wealth, and all you're doing is feeding the monster its dinner. All you're really doing is just giving the centipede more legs that it can walk with. I'm usually never surprised that big companies like this continue to earn shit tons of money, because people will continue to strengthen a culture where they don't actually care about the real quality of anything that will last more than a month. And they just want to look cool so they can gain the attention from a crowd of the same kinds of people so they don't get outcasted. It's these social walls the masses have built for themselves as a prison to be ones that follow the ideology of being just machines that need oil to reinvigorate themselves. It just shows me how miserable some people are with their real world lives, and living in a bubble where everything is objectively good was built as a world that they can pretend things are better than they actually are, being their only escape from reality. Moving back to the main topic at hand, the fact that this thing is literally costing $450, along with the fact that games actually now cost $80 to $90, is literally fucking robbery. I will absolutely never support such an evil business practice like this. Hell, I don't even think full price should really even be $50. I think people should just pay $40 maximum. I know I'm asking for a bit much saying that, and believe me, I know, and I get it. But at some point, we've got to start drawing the line somewhere before shit like this gets out of hand. What's even worse is the fact that this game console is literally trying to delete physical game copies from existing, which I think is a huge threat to the video game industry and video games in general to be able to preserve games. Honestly, if you're really that much of a true Nintendo fan and you really want to escape the world sometimes that much, then I don't see why you couldn't just play older games that were already released and do that instead. Truthfully, older video games are actually objectively better than new games. Back then, it didn't take hundreds of millions of dollars to produce a new hit for the market. Of course, there were always bad video games throughout history, but there was just something that felt greater back then. Getting excited about a new game coming out, and then actually playing it. Like, for example, when I'll never forget being excited when Forza Motorsport 2 actually came out. Hell, I'll never forget when Super Smash Bros. Brawl came out not too long ago, and that still remains one of my top 5 favorite games of all time to this day. I've played a ton of video games over the years, so believe me when I actually tell you that. I believe the Super Nintendo age and the Wii ages were the golden ages for Nintendo as a company. Not so much when the NES came out, though, because despite the fact games were really starting to come back after the crash of 1983, people were still trying to understand, kind of, and figure out what a game actually was. And there was also a lot of bad games on the NES. I haven't played a lot of games on the NES, so I can't really review anything, but you could at least gather a clue. And I'll never forget actually playing Metroid on there, and I was at awe when I learned that the game actually makes you enter a password in order to save your progress. That's bullshit. But to be fair, I can't really deny that games have also came a very long way since then. And while games, at least in my eyes, have been falling back down to that level over the past several years at this point, I'm glad developers typically understand what saving your progress means at this point. Back then, though, you didn't have problems with simply just grabbing your fucking controller and being able to use it to have fun. You didn't have Joy-Con drift, where you can't even really fucking control your character on screen at times, and you didn't feel like the buttons were too small to grip on your hands, like even the Switch 1 had problems with. With a Wii remote, you could just put batteries in and use the controller however way you want to, and it would still fucking work. This may even piss some people off hearing this, but even the Wii U didn't have problems like this with the gamepad. And I know what I'm talking about because I've actually owned a Wii U for several years now, and for about a decade at this point. I had it because I wanted to play Hyrule Warriors, which is also one of my top 30 favorite games ever. I'll probably do a video breaking down what my favorite games ever are one day. But now in today's world, I hear about this Mario Kart game that's open world, and I don't quite understand the appeal for it. The game looks okay, but I think the concept for an open world Mario Kart game seems kind of pointless when you could just have Mario Kart and a normal open world Mario game. Could you honestly say firmly, without a doubt, that this game has a ton of soul put into it, like nothing's ever been done before, and like this before? It just seems odd to me that a game like this exists when in reality it's just a Mario Kart game trying to emulate the same formula that Breath of the Wild had. And not that that's really a bad thing, but I think that it would have been more suitable to have it been done for just a regular Mario game, as opposed to just simply Mario Kart. My biggest question for people out there, though, is what really is the Switch 2 bringing that's really going to change the gaming industry in a positive direction? Let go of your feelings of how Nintendo shaped your childhood and really look deeply to answer that question. Is this console really going to be the future of gaming in a positive light? Or are we just letting blind nostalgia chain us away from seeing how detrimental this console can actually be? I don't know about you guys, but while I'm going back to play older games like Final Fantasy VI, which is actually the greatest game I've ever played, here's other people saying stuff that will age like green milk within the next 5 years for a disposable product. Was the Switch 2 really worth buying in the end? Or was it just another waste of money thrown down the toilet? I really hope that games won't stay this price for very long. Just saying. Nintendo is dead to me personally at this point. Not just because of the company has become the most soulless monster they became, but on top of that, they don't even have enough respect for their fans to care about putting out games and other products that really have any passion or soul put into them. And as a true Nintendo fan myself, I won't stand for this. And that's why I believe that buying the Switch 2 is a disgrace to me as a fan, and everything wrong with Nintendo as a whole company, because it represents how they really only care about money. So that way the executives can buy their new Ferraris and Lamborghinis while looking down on poor people as just mere peasants. Please let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I value other people's opinions just as much as my own to have a mature discussion about stuff. Please like and subscribe for more awesome content, and thanks for watching.